Hello everyone, this is update for August 9, 2023, day 532 of the war, end of day update. Also catch up for August 8. I'm gonna jump straight to the military situation around Ukraine. I will skip today strategic updates and I'll provide them in the next video. So first, Russia is continuing its past preparation for the big war. They have two new military districts created, Leningrad, which is St. Petersburg, and then also Moscow. So this is used to be how the Soviet Union, organized military districts, and basically Russia is returning to that model, and they basically splitting up the whole, call it Western district, into two, so they sort of better manage the situation overall. And because Leningrad is more like north west for Russia, and Moscow is really west-west, even though Moscow is kind of protected by the Belarus, essentially. That's going to be, if things really go sideways, this is going to be main battlefield between Russia and the West. And Russian Minister of Defense had this large meeting with a lot of high-ranking officers, where he made very clear statement that this is war between Russia and the West. This is for those in the West who still think that this is somehow a war between Ukraine and Russia. Russia is very clear that the main enemy is West, and it's not about Ukraine. It's not about this, pieces of Ukraine that are being currently captured by Russia. It's much bigger war, much bigger fight. So again, I think I mentioned about Vivek Ramaswamy in the US, which is, in my view, completely misunderstanding the whole situation of what this war is about. Ukraine is just sort of the first theater of the war, initial sort of phase of the war, probably, and hopefully it will stay there. But it's still at large war between the West and Russia, and I would say also China, and as I said, North Korea, Iran. This is very clear, sort of four countries. There might be more that will eventually join them. Also, a little bit more information on the Russian economy. So the Russian ruble is continuing its slide towards 100 Russian rubles per $1. It reached 98. This is starting to create problems in Russia with inflation. So Russian government is trying to limit retail markups in the large chains to for the sort of most popular food items to 5%, to kind of like keep the social situation under control. And the other interesting part is, you probably observed that crude oil really jumped almost to the $90 per barrel, and it still doesn't help Russian budget and everything, because war really consumes a lot of resources, and that's just a testament to how wasteful the war by its nature is. The same is happening on the Ukrainian side, on the Western side, and it's just the nature of the war. This will create more and more problems for Russia down the road in terms of food security. I mentioned before about the chicken shortages. This is just the first things that that popping up. Eventually it will get worse. At the same time, this does not mean that there will be immediate social unrest in Russia and so on. This is far from that moment. This is just initial signs of the problems in Russia. Also related for the Russian grain trade, Russia is experiencing problems because of the Ukrainian attack of the Russian, I think it was oil tanker. Now all of the ship owners, they are less willing to carry Russian grain and other Russian exports from the Black Sea. So the freight rates went up significantly, which obviously eats into margins, and because it's commodities, the margins are slim. So any increase creates extremely disproportionate hit to the profit for the export. So that really creates, even there is not active sort of destruction of the ships, but sort of threat, credible threat, creates enough of the problem for Russia with its export from Black Sea. We'll see if this sort of continues and persists. But this is quite, I would say, efficient way to undermine Russia's economic situation. It's obviously not going to completely undermine, but this definitely will create potentially significant dent in Russian economic situation. And also, if you multiply it with general decay in the economy, this can create synergetic effect. Now let's switch a little bit more to the battlefield in Ukraine. I just want to provide a little bit general kind of like update is that this rockets Storm Shadow from UK, and Ukraine also got the same equivalent from France, are extremely efficient so far. To the point that Russian side is literally trying to hunt down Ukrainian tactical bombers, which is Su-24. This is old, I would say, Soviet junk, but still they're useful in launching those rockets. So Russia, this rocket's basically creating quite a bit of a problem and quite a bit of destruction on the Russian side. Now let's do a quick walk through the front line, starting from the north, and then I'm going to move in a clockwise fashion. So the situation along the state border remains more or less the same. There is obviously adversarial activities, but it's relatively limited. Now let's move to the north Lugansk front line. Russian troops are continuing their pressure. There's also pressure north of Kupiansk. There is strong pressure from the Russian side. It's not offensive, large-scale offensive. It's still tactical pressure. And the goal of this pressure is to pull Ukrainian resources from Zaporizhya front line to effectively undermine this attempts at so-called offensive down there in the south. So far, Russian troops are finally contained here near Kislivka. There are contradicting information about the situation up northeast of Kupiansk. As I have more concrete information, more reliable, I'll provide updates on that situation. Otherwise, the rest of it is fairly quiet. Now let's move to the North Donbass front line. Northern sector is as well pretty quiet. There is fighting going on in the southern sector around Klishchiivka, Kurdyumivka, Andreevka. Basically, this whole area is effectively attacks, counterattacks. Ukrainian forces still working on liberating this village Klishchiivka, which is kind of like, as I said, is a gray zone, no man's zone or gray zone. And eventually it will be sort of, the Ukrainian forces will be able to get a full control of it. Unfortunately, it's a slow work in progress for Ukrainian side. At the same time, as I said before, this does not mean any kind of offensive, any extraordinary success. All of this is just squeezing Russian troops from this village at a pretty high expense, paying high price for it, which, as I said before, Ukraine cannot afford, just due to the size of the Russia's size, which is at least 4 times larger than Ukraine. Now let's move to the central Donbass front lines. Things here are more or less the same. Attacks around the Avdiivka salient, out of Pisky salient and north of Avdiivka, then attacks in Marinka. So far they're not going anywhere, as always, just providing update, just to keep everyone updated on this. Now let's move to Zaporizhya front line. Here Ukrainian forces renewed their attempts at this, I would say, tactical attacks to squeeze Russian troops. So Ukrainian forces had some limited success in Novorossiysk. Different sources provide different information. Some of them that basically Novorossiysk is turning into the also no man's land or gray zone. Some that Russian forces still control half of the village. But as I said before, this village comes together with Staromayorsky, and it's just a question of time before Ukrainian forces will liberate it. Russian troops are trying to counterattack, so this is basically fierce fighting, but at the small scale level. This is not any major offense or anything, just very fierce, low scale fighting. Similar situation is happening here in north of Robotyne. Ukrainian troops managed to basically kind of create a wedge here in the Russian defenses east of Robotyne. They advanced, don't have less than 1 kilometer, let's put it this way. So there are sort of some advances, Russian troops trying to counterattack. So again, the same kind of situation, attack, counterattack, but it's all really tactical fighting. This is not really major offensive. And as I said before, the problem for both sides. This is not just Ukraine, Russia is the same, is there is such a level of degradation in the military command and skills of the troops that both armies simply not capable of a true large-scale offensives, how they should be. So they turn into this small-scale tactical squeezes, which are costly for both sides. You know, when Russian side is doing it's the same suicidal attacks, when Ukrainian side is doing the same suicidal attacks, essentially. And as I said, this goes back to all of this degradation in the command level and also degradation in the skills of the soldiers, even though Ukrainian soldiers are definitely much more motivated than the Russian ones. Now let's move to front line along Dnipro River. So there's some activity, renewed activity on this section of the front line. So first of all, there are reports that this 7th Airborne Division was pulled to Zaporizhya front line. And so there is even fewer Russian troops defending this eastern bank of Dnipro River. Apparently this was used by Ukrainian forces. They did a very successful landing operation here. It's near the village Kozatsky Lageria, and so basically, as I said, was successful. Russian side tried to counterattack, was not successful. So there is some small-scale bridgehead is there. Again, this is just a sort of newly established bridgehead. There's no attempts to really make a major breakout out of this small, I would even call tiny bridgeheads that Ukrainian forces slowly but surely are building up on the eastern side of Dnipro River. So we'll see how this goes. But I would say, given this whole situation with, you know, strong Russian defensive lines on the Zaporizhya front line, lack of Ukrainian command, lack of organization, lack of Ukrainian army, this might be the only viable option for Ukrainian side to make any meaningful, you know, changes or to basically change outcome of this so-called offensive and make meaningful advances towards Crimea and generally liberating Ukrainian territory. But again, this is, I would say, I would probably say premature to sort of say about that this is really any kind of major offense or anything. This is really remains at a small tactical level and remains to be seen if actually it's going to be exploited by Ukrainian command. That's all for today. Thanks for watching. Until next time. Bye-bye.